Streaming from Oklahoma's own digital studio, this is OU Football Update.
All right, I'm thrilled now to be joined by Doug Karsch, the play-by-play voice of the Michigan Wolverines. We got a big-time, primetime matchup coming up Saturday night in Norman, Sooners and Wolverines. Doug, thanks for joining us. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, and I can't tell you how excited I am to come to Norman. This feels like a dream trip. Like, I grew up, and while I'm watching Desmond Howard and Anthony Carter and Rick Leach and Jim Harbaugh play, I'm also watching Brian Bosworth and watching Baker Mayfield in recent years and CeeDee Lamb and God, the Selman brothers. I remember one of the first Michigan games I watched. Oklahoma beat Michigan in the Orange Bowl 14-6 when Michigan didn't complete a pass till the fourth quarter. Things were different back then, but I can't believe these two teams are getting together, and I can't believe I get to be there for it.
I think the stat in that game is Michigan completed 2 passes and Oklahoma completed 3. And I bet we have a few more.
Oklahoma completed all 3 passes to the same guy. Michigan's quarterback got knocked out, had to come back, and they didn't score till late, till Oklahoma fumbled deep in their own territory. And yeah, apparently it still stinks.
I'm excited for this weekend too, and I am beyond excited about next year. Just getting to go to your place and see the big house and experience Ann Arbor. So glad that this series got put on the schedule. What is the excitement level around Ann Arbor this week for this matchup?
Well, it's growing for sure. And, you know, there are special times in college football where I call these helmet games or Xbox games. Just you put these 2 helmets on the field and all eyeballs turn to see what's going to happen. Or gamers put this matchup together on Xbox and that's the only place it happens. But the Michigan fan base is really pumped for this and probably a little bit more enthusiastic because they think they might have found their quarterback. We'll see about that because this is a whole different test. And obviously Brent Venables is going to throw the kitchen sink at a freshman quarterback. But, you know, it's brewing right now. It's brewing. And I think the feeling is, okay, if the kid in Michigan can pass this test, then this is a Michigan team that contend for the playoff. If not, that's still in question. And look, you know, there's a lot for an 18-year-old quarterback to handle. But if he can go into Oklahoma against that defense, with some of the athletes they have, and that environment, against that defensive coordinator and make plays, I think you're going to see a Michigan fan base that is, whoa, what do we have here? Really fired up.
What was your impression of Bryce Underwood against New Mexico?
I was impressed. You know, there's obviously you take the competition under consideration, but here's one thing that is a fact. New Mexico was the best defense he'd ever faced, better than anybody he'd ever faced in high school or any all-star game. And so for him to be able to come in and make the plays that he did, there was a couple real telling moments in that game. One is Michigan was up 17-7, and New Mexico kicked off, and Michigan fumbled the kick. And New Mexico turned it into 3 points, and there's 2 minutes left in the first half, and now it's 17-10. And Michigan goes to 2-minute drill, and the first 2 plays lose 4 yards. It's 3rd and 14. New Mexico's now using their timeouts. They're thinking they can get the ball back and maybe tie the game up before the half. And Michigan's looking at a 3rd and 14, and the play there with the freshman quarterbacks usually to hand the ball off, make New Mexico use their last timeout, and punt it away. They called a slant pass, small window, and Bryce Underwood delivered a strike to Channing Goodwin for 39 yards. And to me, it was that they had the faith in a true freshman to call the play as much as for him to execute it, which he did execute. And that made me think, he has won them over so much in the time he's been there that they have faith in him. That's the kind of thing you do with a junior. Maybe not so much with a freshman, but they did it with a true freshman who literally just turned 18 the week prior, and he delivered for them. And then later in the game, he had a little touch pass that he floated over a linebacker to his tight end, Marlon Klein, where he just ballooned it out there and Klein ran under it. And you thought, okay, these are some big-time throws and some big-time moments. Again, the tests are going to get bigger. There's no question about it. But the first time we saw him in live action, it looked pretty good.
Satisfy your sweet tooth with a Brahms Old-Fashioned Banana Split. Crafted with a delicious banana, split down the middle and filled with not 1, but 3 scoops of Brahms premium ice cream flavors. To complete this masterpiece, all your favorite toppings are poured on each scoop to bring it all together in a perfect harmony of flavor. Treat yourself to an old-fashioned banana split at Brahms, where every spoonful leaves you wanting more.
He's impressive. He's physically impressive for sure. One of the interesting storylines in this game is your head coach, obviously Sharon Moore, a former Oklahoma Sooner. Brent Venables was his defensive coordinator when he was here on the offensive line. We've been rooting for him ever since he took over to do good things up there in Michigan, and he is. He took over in a tough spot, obviously. You talk to him every week. What have been your impressions of Sherrone and the job he's done here early on?
Really comfortable in the job. Interviewing Jim Harbaugh every week was always a challenge. You never knew what you were going to get. Sherrone is a lot easier to talk to, but he also seems to know his strengths and weaknesses of his football team, seems to have built a staff that help complement him and what he needs. And I really like his hire of Chip Lindsay and talking and getting to know him as an offensive coordinator. And Sherrone is recruiting well. I've watched him change some things that he did early. And a small example, okay, is, last year they beat Ohio State and they planted the flag in the middle of the field. Mm-hmm. And that led to the big kerfuffle. And I watched it unfold from up above and thought, oh boy, this isn't going to end well. And Sherrone came out this spring and said, yeah, we're not going to plant flags anymore. I made a rule. And that's sort of growing into the job because he believes it's about, the team and the kids. And the moment that happened, all anybody wanted to talk about was what happened after the game. And so there's a little bit of learning curve there. And but I like that he saw something he didn't like and said, I'm going to take charge and I'm going to make a change. And there's other subtleties that I see him taking control of. But he's turning it into his own program. It felt a little bit at the beginning like he was co-opting Jim Harbaugh's program, but now he's putting his own touch onto it more, and I like the direction it's going. And he's recruiting at an incredibly high level.
I didn't think about this until you said it. We're the only two that have been on the mic when a flag's been planted at the horseshoe, other than Ohio State.
When Oklahoma did it, it didn't lead to a big brawl, did it? But then again, Jack Sawyer wasn't playing for Ohio State.
Not at the time, but it's been quite the issue ever since, that's for sure.
Yeah.
If you have a concern, we're one game in, so we're all trying to guess at what kind of teams they have. But if you have a concern about this Michigan team going into the year or after seeing them once, what would it be?
Well, as far as specific to this game, I think it'll be interesting to see how Michigan's secondary handles those Oklahoma receivers. 4, 5, and 9 look exceptionally good to me. And the tight end looks like he is obviously a weapon. Wink Martindale, the former NFL coordinator, is Michigan's defensive coordinator. And he said, look, we put together a game plan we used to use against Lamar Jackson. That's something that we're going to look to do maybe in this game. So, but as far as the challenges for Michigan, I think the Oklahoma wide receivers against Michigan secondary is one that's going to be really interesting. And then I think probably for both teams, it's how do their offensive lines hold up, right? I mean, if Michigan's front seven is really good, even without Jason Barham for 30 minutes. But I was impressed with what I saw from Oklahoma's front as well. And Michigan's offensive line, look, they had an offensive line that took them to a national championship that was loaded with 4th and 5th year guys. And in the wake of them leaving, there was a lot of youth. And a lot of that youth learned on the job last year and grew up to the point where they managed to beat Ohio State and Alabama in the last 2 games of the season. Now, they did it by scoring 2 touchdowns on drives that combined totaled 13 yards, but they did beat Alabama and Ohio State. So I think those kids had a lot to learn. I'll be watching those 2 battles, particularly this Saturday night.
What's the impact of not having Jason Barham in your mind in the first half?
Okay, so he's definitely one of their best defensive players, but if there was a position that they could afford to get into the depth a little bit, it would be linebacker. Jimmy Rolder is a kid that they got out of Illinois. He was actually an Illinois baseball commit. He was, multi-sport athlete, and his stepdad played in the NFL with the Dolphins, and he has been a player that they have loved for years, and he hasn't been healthy. And it goes back to high school. He's been battling injuries since high school. He's finally healthy, and he got a lot of run in the second half last week when Barham was out, and he looked good. And they got a guy, this is a name, I don't know how much he's going to play this weekend, but he had an interception last week and a sack. His name is Cole Sullivan, who's a youngster out of Pittsburgh. And talking to him this week, I asked him, what was your favorite, which one of the big plays was your favorite? And he said, I ran down on kickoff and blew up a blocker. And I said, wait a sec. You had an interception, you had a sack, and your favorite play was running down on kickoff and blowing up a blocker. And then I realized I'm talking to a linebacker. He doesn't think the way I think.
Yeah.
And so, they've got some young players there they really like. Obviously, not having Barham is going to hurt, but that's kind of the one position where they've got some depth. So, we'll see what plays itself out, but Barham is definitely a playmaker on that defense.
When you think Michigan football, you think physical, trenches, run the football, and certainly nothing happened last week that would lead you thinking otherwise. Justice Haynes looked great and ran for a ton of yards. But Chip Lindsay's new, and you got a quarterback now who it looks like is capable of throwing it all over the yard. Do you anticipate this Michigan offense looking different than it did in the past? Not necessarily Saturday night, although it could be, but just in general this year, is this going to be a little bit more of an open attack than we've seen out of Michigan in the past?
It might be. I mean, Chip Lindsay isn't tipping his hand at all with this, but they put Bryce on the move a little bit. They could do that with JJ, but Jim Harbaugh used to love to line up in an I formation, put 7 offensive linemen out there, scream at the defense, we're handing it off right here, and then hand it off right there. He loved that. He called it man ball. Chip Lindsay isn't from in that same camp, but there are some similarities in the run concepts. But I think Lindsay's bringing a whole different thing to the table. You know what he talked about when he was at Auburn? He faced a Clemson team where the coordinator was Brent Venables. And he talked about how he thought they could move the ball, but where he really ran into problems and a matchup to watch this week will be red zone. He thought that Venables' defenses in particular were really good in the red zone. So this is going to be an interesting matchup for sure. But the early returns on Chip Lindsay is that he's bringing more variety to the offense and maybe a little bit more balance.
All right, final question. We'll get you out. We live in a day and age where you can lose a game or 2, maybe 3, and still be in the conversation for the college football playoff. What is the importance of Saturday night for Michigan, this team, this season?
Well, it'll springboard them into that conversation. Right now, I feel like they're considered a bit of a fringe playoff team. That plays itself out, obviously, during the season. You earn it. They have an odd schedule, 6 road games. And, so 6 at home, 6 on the road. And the trips are 2 Oklahoma, 2 Nebraska, 2 USC, and along with a trip to Wrigley Field to play Northwestern, the annual trip to Michigan State and at Maryland. But, most years at Oklahoma, at Nebraska, at USC feels like that would eliminate you from national championship contention. But those aren't easy places to play. Now, we'll see if those opponents, how they shape up to be this year. But I feel like they're going to have to go out and earn it. And, of course, they have the annual season-ending showdown with Ohio State. You don't want to go into the Ohio State game with 3 losses, right?
Yeah.
If you're trying to make the playoff, you want to go into that game with 1 or 2 losses. And then if you win it, you're talking about having a good seeding, maybe a Big Ten championship contender. But this is sort of a springboard game. I think of it as a swing game, one that could go either direction. And if you can put one in the win column, that gives you a leg up on maybe a loss that you have to suffer later in the year.
Here's what I'm proposing. If it's tied at the end of regulation, your color analyst, John Jansen, my color analyst, Teddy Lehman, we wrestle it out at the 50-yard line, winner take all.
Well,
I think the crowd would love it.
I tell you what, I think John Jansen would love it. My guess is Teddy Lehman would love it. And
They'd love it.
John likes to say, I think I got one more series in me. Not a game, but give me a series. But yeah, they'll feel like throwback guys. I was listening to Teddy break down this game a little bit, and he loved Michigan's fullback, Max Bredesen. And I'm like, that is such a linebacker thing to say, because you know what linebackers do? They have to deal with blocking fullbacks all day long. And he really had the book down on Max Bredesen. And I'm like, this is spoken like a true linebacker, man. I loved listening to it. So, can't wait for it. Look forward to it. Tons of respect for the Oklahoma program, and really, really excited to come out there to Norman.
Oh, it's going to be great. That maize and blue and the crimson and cream, those helmets on the field together. This is going to be an all-timer Saturday night. Doug Karsch, play-by-play voice at Michigan. Safe travels. I'll see you in the booth on Saturday. Thanks for your time, Doug.
Sounds great, Toby.
Thank you for watching this Oklahoma's own digital studio stream. Stay with News 9, online and on television anytime for the latest news, weather, and sports.